Uh, Got it. Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Hartman, the Community Development Director for the Town of Paradise. And I just want to say thank you to those who came in person. Thank you to those who are joining us online for tonight's community meeting. As you recall, after the fire, we had multiple community meetings to reach out to the citizens about the future of development in town, all of which tied back to eventually an updated general plan. And so tonight, we're going to be asking for feedback about two of those elements in the general plan. You kind of think of them as chapters. It's the housing element and the safety element. And so what we'd like to do tonight is just share some data that we've collected about those and get your feedback and ideas about those two elements for the general plan. And again, these are two elements that are probably the most important to the residents here in town, about wildfire policies and about providing adequate and affordable housing for the residents. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. And honestly, your opinions, your ideas really will make a difference in these elements. So thank you very much. With that, I will turn it back to Meredith.
Thanks, Susan. My name is Meredith. I'm with the consultant firm Urban Planning Partners, who's helping the town with this project. A couple of housekeeping items first. We are recording this meeting so that we can share it with your friends and neighbors who weren't able to attend. So just be aware. Also, you are all muted right now, those of you who are joining virtually, and we ask that you do stay muted for the presentation part. We are very eager to hear from you. That part will come later when we break into smaller discussion groups. If you would like to use closed captioning, if you're attending virtually, you can click on the button that says live transcript at the bottom of your screen. And this will have subtitles that show up as people are talking. There's also a chat function at the same toolbar at the bottom there, and you can contact us if you're having any technical support. You'll see Alyssa Chung is our designated tech support person, and it's also her birthday. So be kind to her if you do give her a call, please. And finally, there's a lot of acronyms and jargon that go into all of this, and we are making a conscious effort to avoid that. But we have also created a handy little guide that has some of those terms to know that might help you as we're discussing this, and we'll put the link to that in the chat that I just talked about. And with that, let's get started. So thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Tabitha, if you could share our presentation. We'll start with just some quick introductions on who's here tonight. You heard from the lovely Susan Hartman, the Community Development Director at Paradise. I'm Meredith Rupp, the Deputy Project Manager for this effort. I'm joined by my colleagues, Leslie Carmichael. You can go to the next slide, thanks. And our wildfire expert, Zeke Lunder, is here today too. And of course, the very important tech support. You can do one more click, Tabitha. Alyssa Chung once again, and here is a phone number to reach her with if you are having trouble with the chat function too. 510-956-3675. So by the end of tonight, we hope you'll leave with some familiarity with what the basic requirements of the housing and safety elements are. You'll understand some of the key findings to date, especially about barriers to housing. You'll feel heard, and you'll also receive future notices on this project if you're interested. And we hope that we will leave tonight having learned more about your ideas and concerns, and that we'll also have a contact list of those of you who would like to stay involved. Tonight's program will include a brief presentation, hopefully 10 minutes, about some of the key housing barriers we've discovered so far. And then we'll do a brief overview of some of the solutions our team's been talking about internally and with some other stakeholders to consider. And then the real meat of this, we hope, will be our breakout rooms, where we'll hear your feedback on these potential solutions and get some new ideas. Then we'll reconvene and hear a little bit about what each group discussed. We'll vote on favorite options, and then we'll have 5 minutes to close us out. And so now that you've heard a little bit about the lay of the land and who we are, we want to learn a little bit more about who's in the audience tonight. And so we have a live poll that you can answer in one of two ways. If you're using the internet, you can go to this website, pollev.com/uppartners. We'll also put that link in the chat. If you're on your phone, you can send us a text. Send a text to 22333. And in the body of that text, type UP Partners. And this will get you logged into the poll. We're going to go to the next slide now, which will show the questions we're asking, but there will still be directions on how to access it. So no worries. Can you move us forward, Tabitha? And once again, tech support's here. All right, I'll give everyone a couple minutes to answer. How long have you lived in Paradise? And so you'll text or click on A, B, C, D, E. Give everyone a couple moments. All right, so it looks like we've got a fair amount of people that have been in Paradise for a while, and also a couple others who are interested in listening in but don't live here. Everyone that's here that does live here has been here at least 4 years, so we've got a lot of great knowledge from you all that we look forward to learning about. Our next,
Let's
yeah.
just take a quick poll. If anybody's having issues with using poll everywhere, could you just raise your hand? If not, we'll move on. I just want to make sure people are able to use it. All right, we don't see any raised hands, so I think we should be okay. Great.
It looks like there's one raised hand. I'll let Alyssa follow up with them. All right, our next question is a free response, so you'll get to type your answer. We're interested in, if you just chose one word, what's something you love about your home, your community, living in Paradise. If you're not in Paradise, then I guess think about the region. I see friendliness, peaceful, people. People seems to be a good one. Also the word good. Give everyone another moment if there's any other words to add. Looks like the people really make the difference with this place. Also getting some more support for peaceful. That's great context for us, thank you. Oh, and nature. All right, our next question is, why are you attending? And there might be more than one reason, but if you can choose the one you identify with most strongly. So it looks like based on what we have, the most interest is in increasing fire resiliency, followed by interest in Paradise's recovery, and then some responses about supporting more housing in Paradise. Our last question tonight for this portion is just how you heard about the event. We want to make sure we get even more people at our next one, and appreciate you helping us out. All right. Good to know for next time. Looks like digital methods. Email from the town was the clear breakaway, then social media and town website. All right, thanks everyone for answering those. I'm gonna pass it over to Leslie now to talk a little bit about the context for these projects.
All right, thanks, Meredith. Next slide. So the first question is, what is a housing element? Well, it's a plan for the community and to meet the communities and the region's housing needs over the next 8 years. It's required by the state as part of the general plan. And one important thing to note is that it doesn't require that the town actually build the homes, but it does require the town to create rules and policies about where housing goes and how much, and to show it has capacity for additional housing. Next slide. There are several different components of a housing element. There's a housing needs assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about housing needs tonight. Evaluation of past performance, where we review the previous housing element and how those policies and programs worked for the city or the town. It requires a housing sites inventory and indication of where housing sites are and their characteristics. A constraints analysis, including both governmental and non-governmental constraints. And then the action items really are the policies and programs for how the city is going to impact how housing is built. And then all along the way, there's community outreach and engagement. Next slide, please. So you'll hear people talk about the regional housing needs allocation. This is one of those jargon terms Meredith was talking about. We call it RENA. And this is where, this is one of the main drivers of the housing element. The town has to show the capacity for this regional housing needs allocation. And this basically comes from the state. The state looks at all kinds of data, population, job growth projections, overcrowding, and in the case of Butte County, how many units were destroyed in the fire. And the state assigns a RENA to each region of the state. And in the case of Butte County, that is just the county and all the jurisdictions in the county. And then the Butte County Association of Governments allocates that number among all the jurisdictions so that they each have a fair share based on things like land availability, sewer and water capacity, transportation infrastructure, projected jobs, and again, units that were lost. And you'll, next slide, please. Here's Paradise's RENA. You'll see it's 7,179 units. About 95% of that is to rebuild what was lost in the fire. And you'll see it spread over 4 different income categories, ranging from very low income, low, moderate, and above moderate. And the 71% is above moderate, and of course, smaller percentages for the lower income categories. Just for a frame of reference, the limit for a moderate income family of 4 is $84,850. So rentals or ownership units would have to be affordable to people to that income to qualify as moderate. All right, now I'm going to turn it back to Meredith, who's going to talk about our housing needs assessment.
So the data that follow are primarily gathered from the Town of Paradise local census survey. So thank you to any of you that took that. The latest census data from the Census Bureau did not reflect the post-fire reality. And so we have a different data set that we're drawing from. And of course, the biggest piece of the housing element and safety element context is the Camp Fire. We lost a lot of units and homes and even sadly some people. And you can see that in this graph here, how the population growth just really plummets. But one interesting thing to note is that the Butte County population does not plummet quite as much. So we know there are people in the county that might want to come back to Paradise, and our challenge is how can we welcome them back, and where do we welcome them back? One of the key pieces of data we looked at was housing cost burden. So you're considered to be spending too much of your income on housing if you spend more than 30% of it. And so on this graph, I know it's a lot of colors and numbers, but what you want to really look at are the green and blue portions of each category. And those people are the ones that are considered to be spending too much of their income on housing. And what you'll see is those bands are the biggest in the extremely low income and the very low income group, and they become smaller when you look at more wealthy households. And so this indicates there appears to be
There we go.
there appears to be a lack of housing that's affordable to those in the lower incomes, is one of the takeaways here. We also looked at this data in terms of whether you own your home or you are a renter. And you'll see once again, the green bar it grows as you go across, and this shows there's a relationship between being a renter and being cost burdened. So if you look at the one on the left, the households that spend less than 10% of their income on housing, only 5% are renters. But when you look at the other end, the households that spend over half of their income on housing, 30% are renters. So we know there's a specific need for affordable rental housing. Another topic tonight is people with disabilities and how we can make sure we have housing to serve them. We know that according to the state of California census data, there's about 7% of Californians that have a disability, compared to almost 18% in Paradise, so a higher number here. And if you look at the graph on the right, you see the majority of them are living in the home of a parent or family or guardian. We also know from talking with service providers who serve people with disabilities, there is an interest for more independence. So we need to make sure we have housing that can cater to that, and also be prepared when the home of the parent, family, or guardian may not be there. In addition to looking at the hard numbers from the local census survey, we've been working with an economist to model the cost of development in Paradise. And working with Strategic Economics, that's the economics firm, we found that multifamily rental development projects, so like apartments, are actually infeasible without subsidies given current construction costs. And any of you who are rebuilding definitely know construction costs are a major barrier. There's also shortages of material and labor given COVID-19 and supply chain issues, and we know insurance fees and sewer utility costs may pose additional challenges. And in the modeling work our economists did, we found that a one-story building with 60 units has a $12.7 million gap when you compare the cost to the expected revenues you can get on rent. And a three-story building that has 160 units has an even bigger gap, $28 million. So we know this is a big barrier that we're going to have to try to address. And so in summary, we know there's a need for more affordable housing and for more supportive housing for those with special needs like the disabled community. And we also know that construction costs are making new development really hard without some form of subsidy. Susan also mentioned at the beginning of this that we're looking at something called a safety element. So that's the chapter of the general plan that looks at hazards, both man-made and natural, like wildfire or flooding. And this safety element is a plan to minimize risks to people's property, safety, businesses related to those hazards. It's required by the state to be updated when the housing element is updated. So that's why we're looking at it now. And it also makes sense while we're thinking about where to put housing and how much of it, how to grow the town, it's important to be considering things like wildfire risk. We know, of course, the majority of Paradise is in what CAL FIRE defines as a very high fire severity zone. We also know that the private dead-end roads have made it hard to evacuate in the past. And so as we're thinking about and planning for housing, we need to consider where to put it and how to mitigate some of our environmental hazards. So in summary, we have the need for affordable housing, supportive housing. We need to consider construction costs and how to get around that. And we have wildfire resiliency woven throughout it all. So those are our main topics for tonight. I'm going to pass it over to Leslie now to talk about some of the solutions we've discussed.
Okay, so I'm going to give a very brief summary of some of these solutions, and then this is what we want feedback on when we go into the breakout rooms. Next slide, please. So one of them is the sewer service area, what we're calling an overlay zoning district. So this would be a tool to allow more and denser housing in the areas with infrastructure and services. And those happen to be the ones that are a little farther away from the greatest wildfire risk, which is on the periphery of town. I know it's hard to see in here, but the sewer area includes areas along Skyway, Clark, and Pearson. And so those would be the areas affected by this overlay zoning district. Next slide. Another option is to figure out ways to increase project feasibility. There is some community development block grant recovery money, $55 million earmarked for multifamily projects in Paradise. Other options could include non-traditional building methods and typologies such as tiny homes or off-site construction. And then use of non-traditional labor force such as volunteers or students. Next slide. And then we want to also get your feedback on ways to increase resiliency. So that could be buffers like green belts or parks on key parcels, fire hazard impact fees to encourage development in some areas and not so much in others, easements for vegetation management, to increase requirements like setbacks or fire safe materials, and to increase requirements or enforcement on defensible space and home hardening. All right, so now we're going to get to the fun part. Alyssa is going to assign you to breakout rooms, and those of you in the council chambers are going to be your own breakout room. And we have facilitators and note takers who are going to help you in the breakout rooms. And I'm like to remind those facilitators to turn on recording when they get in their breakout room. All right.
We're ready. If there's any folks still in the main room that are having issues, please let me know. You're able to get in there? Probably.
Tabitha, are you in the office? Alyssa, did you have any people that had issues or any?
No, I think it's just you, Tabitha. I got it. Okay. It looks like you're currently in Leslie's, Tabitha. Mm-hmm. Aren't you doing note taking for Meredith? Sorry. Is Hannah in this one already?
Hey, could you put me back in Leslie's breakout room?
Yes, I might assign you to Meredith's because Tabitha is currently in Leslie's. Sorry, there's a little shuffling.
Cool.
And I'm gonna let them just get going a little bit and then I'll drop into.
Okay. All right.
How long is the breakout for?
Breakout room should be for 30 minutes. So they just started 2 minutes ago. I didn't set a timer because I'm hoping, you know, if
folks feel they need more time, they can let me know and I can extend it.
Okay. I think 30 minutes should be enough time.
30 minutes is pretty long.
Happy birthday, by the way.
All right, are we all back?
Looks like
I'm here.
people are coming along. It's almost everyone.
I hope you all had good discussions. My group certainly did. Thank you everyone for your participation. Alyssa, can I actually have you go through each note taker and we'll do a quick report back on some of the key things each group discussed. And actually we'll start with those of you at Town Hall. So Susan, for
Yeah.
your group, any main points to share?
Thank you. Yes, so we had some great discussion about the density along Skyway and Clark. Talking about, probably at this juncture, most comfortable with 2-story developments and could see densities doubling with the current 15 unit per acre up to 30, at least, taking a look at that in that sewer district overlay. And just the discussions about the taller the buildings, the more people that are in the buildings, and still trying to be cognizant of having to move large amounts of people in short periods of time. And so just trying to be mindful of that. And that's kind of, how we're coming to some of these decisions about height and densities. And then also good discussion about the wildfire resiliency policies out there and supporting, and some good feedback also to consider, especially in terms of the wildfire impact fees and the potential it might have for helping with insurance costs, perhaps when you're part of a hazard mitigation program, things like that. And the parks and the green belts, definitely a lot of support there, and about ways for fuel management, whether that's through dedicated crews, volunteer groups, goats, things of that nature. And then some of the concerns, I think our biggest concerns are about seeing our weed abatement program be successful with so many out of town owners, and how do we get there, and making sure that we as a town are following through and making sure that these lots get cleared. So definitely still concerned about owners, walking away from their lots, and how can we get to a place where, people feel safe returning back to town and living here.
Thank you. Tabitha, how about your group?
Yeah, so we had some really good discussion concerning the increased density. There was greater support for single story, but support for higher density granted mix of uses, which also aids in safety and walkability, which we were in support for, and then some minor concern for traffic. As the density increases, it's more people. And then in discussions around kind of fire resiliency and weed abatement, there was strong support for enforcement of defensible space, but maybe just concern over how much work it is, and who is going to be regulating that, and if it's on all of the homeowners to care for. And then there was also mention of the enforcing CAL FIRE standards of space between homes and structures, and just in rebuilding, being conscious of that. And then as far as building materials, we had some mention about variety of home types, but also concern that we are rebuilding in a sustainable way and in a more lasting way. So being conscious that as development standards can become a little bit more lenient to encourage rebuilding, then we're also being conscious of maintaining character for the town and lasting development. So some good feedback.
Thanks, Tabitha and Hannah in my group.
Sure. So for the first question regarding density along the Skyway, and the main corridors, we did have some concerns that 3 stories is very large for the region. Others had no problem with it as long as there is architectural control and they look nice. There was some preference to keep it at 2 stories, but again, if it was nicely landscaped and all that, it would be okay. Regarding parks and green belts as buffers, there was strong support for this. Someone also mentioned they would like to see the river edge even possibly be purchased by the state or the county to maintain it as a buffer and protect against fires coming down from the canyon. There was some slight reservation about the development impact fees. Folks would hate for it to prevent someone from building on the land, but it ultimately depends on how much it is. The only concern about increased requirements for setbacks or fire safe materials is what would happen to the homes that are already being rebuilt. And then there was a lot of enthusiasm for programs to facilitate home hardening and vegetation management. It'd be very good to help homeowners with this, especially for disabled folks or someone that doesn't have a lot of income to be able to do it themselves. And then in our discussion about maintaining adequate defensible space, someone mentioned it would be important to go lot by lot, make sure every owner is doing what they have to do to maintain the defense of the whole town, that it's really a group effort. However, others mentioned it is difficult for some owners to do this, especially some who aren't physically in town, and that it takes too long to get some people to do their tasks. So maybe we need faster acting laws that allow the town to act faster than 1 year. And then lastly, to support residents in extreme weather events related to heat and drought, someone mentioned or recommended that the community centers be made available or other facilities to use power and AC.
Thanks, Anna. We have one more live poll to just finally to gain some final feedback on which solutions people are most interested in. So once again, if you want to go to your internet browser or get your phone out, you can go one more slide, Tabitha, or actually 2 more slides. Of the housing solutions you heard tonight, which do you support? And you can select multiple here. We want to make sure the policies and programs that we put forward in the housing element are backed by the community. So curious what you think we should move forward with.
And let's just make sure, I know there were some people who had some technical difficulties. If you're still having an issue accessing the poll, please put up the raise hand reaction and I'll reach out to you.
And we'll also be distributing this after the event for people who weren't able to attend. So if you aren't able to troubleshoot it with Alyssa, there is another opportunity. So it looks like every solution has at least one person who supports it. So that's good. At least right now we're tied with increased density in the sewer service area and exploring funding and partnership opportunities for affordable and supportive housing, which just now edged forward to be a number 1. And then when thinking about resiliency, last live poll question tonight, which of these solutions do you support? And once again, you can select multiple answers. Any last responses? Oh, still a little bit of movement. Once again, all the policies have at least a little bit of support. It looks like the strongest contender right now is for green belts or parks on key parcels, followed by increased fire resiliency requirements. Thank you, everyone, for weighing in. And like I said, we'll follow up to get a larger group of the community also to weigh in on this. Before we leave for tonight, and I know we're a little bit over, so I'll go through this quickly, but just want you to know what to anticipate. On our end, we're going to be working hard the next couple months to incorporate your feedback on the housing element and the safety element, and we'll be putting that out published in November, and we have to get it approved by the state to make sure we're in compliance with state law by June, by the summer of 2022. So that's a high level timeline. On your end, your next steps, should you choose to, are to, next slide, Tabitha, to take our exit survey to give us a little bit of feedback about what you liked tonight or what we could do better. And 2 lucky winners will win a $50 gift card to Nick's. So hopefully that piques your interest. You can also get signed up for updates. To do so, you can send us in the chat what your email address is. You could also sign up if you're in person at town hall. You can give your email address to the people there, or you can send me an email. Just let us know however works best for you. We'll be sending an email to everyone that attended, if you are willing to share us your email, to, like I said, have a version of the poll that you did tonight that's available to the rest of the public. And so please tell your friends and family. If you want to review the element when it comes out in November, we would love any feedback. And finally, you can check the town's website, and we'll put that in the chat. If you don't want us to flood your inbox, we wouldn't flood it. It would just be a couple updates. But if you don't want us in your inbox, that's another way to stay in touch. And with that, there's my contact info and Susan's contact info. Please be in touch if you have questions or comments. And thank you so much, everyone. If you do want to stick around to discuss some of the topics a little bit more, I know some of the breakout rooms got cut off a little early. You're welcome to do so, but we did want to wrap up for those of you that have to leave. So thank you, and I'll stay on. Looks like we have a lot of people that wanted to stick around. Thanks, everyone. Let's see what our final number is, and then we can figure out our best strategy.
Susan, could you also unmute again?
Yes, unmute.
Thank you.
Susan, how many people do you have that wanted to stick around?
Do you guys want to stay? Yeah, I still have 4 here.
Okay.
We have 5 participants on our end.
Should we go back into breakout rooms for those who are virtual, and then those who are in person can keep discussing too?
Yeah, we can do that. We still have, yeah, we have a couple that we weren't able to get to.
Okay.
We go back
And just make sure you hit record again, Susan, and stay off of mute. Thank you. So we can, I guess we do need to go in a breakout group, so we'll do that for it.
Give me one moment. I'm just going to add us all to a single large breakout group.
Perfect.
There we go.